2 weeks ago, Ferrari handed the FIA a list of 8 new parts for Lewis Hamilton's car, 8 upgrades, all listed, all legal, all public. Then Hamilton went out and won his first race in red by almost 20 seconds. Here is the strange part. The part that may have mattered most was never on that list. While the whole paddock studied the new floor, Ferrari quietly bolted on something else. And that one hidden choice is the clue to how Hamilton claws back a 41-point gap. So how does a team that didn't win a single race in 2025 suddenly build the fastest car on a Sunday afternoon? That is the question, and the answer is sitting in the body of the SF26. Not in one magic part, in a package. Ferrari showed up at the Barcelona Catalunya circuit with the biggest upgrade any team brought all season, and the main piece was a fully rebuilt floor. 8 parts on paper. One clear idea under all of them. More load, more grip, more of the thing that wins races at a track that has always told the truth about a Formula One car. What follows is a teardown. The floor, the wing, the part nobody listed, and the strategy that turned all of it into a result. By the end, you will know exactly what Ferrari now carries into the rest of this title race, and why the people inside Mercedes are no longer calm about a lead that looked safe a month ago. Start with the official list, because the official list is where the story hides in plain sight. Ferrari's filing to the sports bosses covered 8 parts on the SF26, and the detail in that paper is the first clue to how serious this upgrade was. There was a new front wing with a new footplate, a reworked set of vanes, and a small wing added to the end plate. The nose was new too, with a raised lower surface and a new setup for the car's straight-line mode. Ferrari split the floorwork into 3 separate changes: the floor body, the floor edge, and the floorboard. The diffuser was reshaped, with a redrawn side cutout and a new angle on the diffuser winglet. And a puffed-out side pod shoulder fed a tighter coke line at the back of the car. Read one by one, each line sounds like quiet upkeep. Read together, they show an almost complete rebuild of every surface on the car that makes grip. The floor was the heart of it. Under the 2026 rules, the floor is still where most of a car's grip comes from, pulling the car down to the road through the corners. Ferrari reshaped the keel, redrew the front edge of the floor, and reworked the small upright pieces called claws that guide the air along the floor's edge. The team called the change a new floor built to add grip across the car's main working range. In plain terms, they wanted more grip in more places, instead of in one narrow setup that works on a single kind of corner. The front wing was tuned to match it, guiding the air coming off the front tires and giving the driver more balance to play with. The diffuser changes cleaned up how the air leaves the floor at the back. None of this is fancy. All of it is hard, and it all seemed to work the moment the car hit the track. There is a reason Ferrari poured its work into the floor on purpose. The 2026 cars are all new machines, built around new rules, with moving wings that flatten out on the straights and load back up in the corners. But even with all that new tech bolted on, the floor is still the biggest source of grip on the car. It is the one area where a smart team can find a chunk of lap time that no rival can see in a photo. So when Ferrari rebuilt the floor from the keel forward, it was not chasing a small gain. It was pulling the biggest single lever the rules allow. To see how big a swing this was, look at what everyone else brought to the same race. McLaren, the team many thought would run away with this era, showed up with a single new front wing end plate. Mercedes added a pair of small winglets to the rear wing. Red Bull changed the shape of its front wing. Against those small steps, Ferrari turned up with 8 parts touching the whole car, and it was not even their first big package of the year. They had already brought 11 new parts to Miami earlier in the season. This is a team pushing harder and faster than anyone in the field, and Barcelona was the race where that work finally landed. The people paid to study these cars saw it right away. One top expert put it simply after looking at the result. The upgrade covered most of the car, from the front wing to the diffuser, and nothing was left untouched. And it all seemed to work. The Mercedes camp was even blunter. After watching the package run, Toto Wolff summed it up in one word: a monster. That is not a word a rival team boss uses lightly about a car he is trying to beat. But the listed parts were only the half of the story everyone could see. Here is why this track matters so much, and why a win here means more than a win somewhere else. The Barcelona Catalunya circuit is known in the paddock as an open-air wind tunnel. It has fast corners, slow corners, and everything in between, and it punishes any car that is weak in the air. For decades, the rule of thumb has held. A car that is fast in Barcelona is fast almost everywhere. You cannot fake pace here with a strong engine or a brave driver alone. The track reads the shape of the car and reports back, lap after lap, with no mercy. Teams used to run their pre-season testing here for exactly that reason. If a new part works at this circuit, it works. That is what makes the qualifying results so important. Hamilton put the upgraded Ferrari within 0.06 of a second of pole position. George Russell took top spot for Mercedes, but the gap was tiny, smaller than a blink. Kimi Antonelli lined up third. The only Ferrari that struggled was the other one. Charles Leclerc crashed in the last part of qualifying and could start no higher than 10th, which tells you the car still had to be placed just right to deliver. So the package didn't just look good in a wind tunnel. In Hamilton's hands, it delivered raw single-lap speed at the one circuit that cannot be tricked, and that was only round one. Now we get to the part that was never on the FIA list, because while engineers up and down the pit lane were taking photos of Ferrari's new floor, the team had quietly fitted something else to the car. New wheel rims. Not listed as a body upgrade, not flagged in the official papers, because they are not bodywork at all. Their job is about heat. They pull heat out of the tyres from the inside. This sounds small. It is not small. In 2026, holding down tyre heat is one of the deepest hidden battles in the sport. The tyre maker backed up the wider trend this season, with rear tyre temperatures running at least 15 degrees cooler than the year before, mostly because of how teams now build their rims. A cooler tyre holds its grip longer. It fades later in a stint. It lets a driver keep pushing at the exact moment his rivals are forced to ease off and nurse a worn set of rubber. Ferrari kept its rear rims hidden from view all weekend, shielding them from the cameras and the rival photographers, which tells you exactly how much the team valued them. Put the two halves together and the picture sharpens. The listed floor gave the car more downforce. The hidden rims gave the tyres a longer life. One is grip you can see on a single qualifying lap. The other is grip that only shows up over 20 race laps, when everyone else is sliding around on worn tyres and you are not. That mix is the real story of Barcelona, and it set up everything that happened on race day. And it travels well. Look at the calendar still to come. Up ahead is a run of the hottest races of the year, the kind of high-heat, high-wear events where a tyre that runs cooler is worth more than almost any other edge a car can carry. A floor upgrade helps everywhere. A cooling edge helps most exactly where this title race is heading next. Watch this next detail, because it explains the win, and it explains a lot of what comes after it. Because a fast car does not win a Formula One race on its own. It has to be driven, and it has to be gambled. Ferrari did both. Hamilton started on the soft tyre and went with a bold 3-stop plan, while most of the field tried to make the race work on 2 stops. His first stop came on lap 12, far earlier than anyone expected, a classic undercut built to steal track spot by bolting on fresh rubber, while his rivals stayed out on old tyres. The second stop landed around lap 28. Each time, the fresher tyres and that cooler running let him attack while others saved their pace. Russell's Mercedes, locked into the slower 2-stop plan, kept finding Hamilton coming up behind him on far better rubber, and there was nothing he could do about it. Then, on lap 41, the race cracked open. Fernando Alonso pulled his struggling Aston Martin off the circuit before turn 9 and stopped on track. The race went to a virtual safety car, which forces every car on track to slow to a set speed. For a driver who still needs to make a pit stop, this is gold. Stopping under a virtual safety car costs far less time than stopping at full racing speed because the whole field is crawling at the same moment. Ferrari read it right away and called Hamilton in without a pause. He took his last set of tyres, lost almost nothing to the cars around him, and came back out still in the lead. This is where his race engineer earned his money. Carlo Santi, the engineer Ferrari put on Hamilton's car for 2026, came onto the radio with the call of the day. This is our race. Give everything these 7 laps. It is the critical moment. We have our chance. And Hamilton had the tools to answer. After that last stop, he was running tyres 5 laps fresher than Russell and 4 laps fresher than Antonelli. On pure tyre life, study after the race put his edge at about 3/4 of a second per lap. On a lap that long, against cars that good, that is not a gap. That is a canyon. He simply drove away from the field. And here is the detail that makes the win even sharper. The other Ferrari did not finish. Leclerc, who had crashed in qualifying and fought his way back up the order, dropped out in the closing laps with a fault of his own. So on the day Ferrari let loose the best car in the field, only one of its 2 drivers brought it home. Hamilton did more than win in a fast car. He was the only man who got everything that car had, on a weekend where his own teammate found every way to lose it. That is worth keeping in mind when people call this a lucky result. If you are getting value from this teardown, take 1 second to subscribe. This channel breaks down the real engineering behind every result this season, and there is a lot more coming as this title fight builds. By this season's standards, this was a statement, and the order at the front had been settled not by one thing but by the stack of them. The floor found the grip, the rims saved the tyres. And the strategy tied it together. Hamilton crossed the line 19.5 seconds clear of Russell, the biggest winning gap anyone had managed all season, on a day when the next best car was a Mercedes. It was his first win for Ferrari, his 106th in Formula One, his first win in 686 days, going all the way back to the summer of 2024. And the records kept stacking up behind it. At 41 years old, he became the oldest man to win a Grand Prix since 1970, more than half a century ago. He became the first driver in history to win races in his 20s, his 30s, and his 40s. The podium behind him was fully British for the first time since 1968. But none of that is why this video exists. The result is history now. What matters is the car that made it, because that car does not vanish after one Sunday. It goes to the next race, and the one after that, with the same floor and the same hidden rims, and a driver who now knows exactly what the car can do. And that last part is easy to brush off. For a year and a half, Hamilton had been driving a car that fought him, learning a new team, a new language on the radio, a new way of working with nothing to show for it. 686 days is a long time to go without winning when you have done it more than 100 times before. A driver in that spot can start to doubt whether the wins are still in him. Barcelona answered that question in the loudest way it could. The belief that comes from proving the car and yourself in the same afternoon is not something that shows up on a drawing, but every rival in the paddock knows what it does to a great driver. So the real question is what this whole package means for the 15 races still to come. To understand that, you have to understand where this car actually came from, and it is not quite where the title of this video suggests. The flaw did not take 3 years to build. The team did. When Fred Vasseur took over Ferrari at the start of 2023, he took on a team that kept finding new ways to lose races it should have won. He spent the next 2 years pulling it apart and putting it back together, piece by piece. The biggest move was hiring a new tech chief away from Mercedes, a man who was named in 2024 but only walked through Ferrari's doors that October. Far too late to save the winless 2025 season. The car that won Barcelona is the first one drawn almost fully under that new leadership. By the tech chief's own account, its build only began at the very start of 2025, so this is not a 3-year part. It is a 3-year rebuild, finally turning out its first complete car. Vasseur called the win the reward for the hard work of more than 1,500 people. That difference matters because it tells you these upgrades are not a lucky ceiling the team has bumped into. They are a base it can build on. And the base arrived at the exact moment Ferrari's main rival started to crack. That clock was already ticking quietly under Mercedes, even as the team showed off a title lead in public. Because here is what the Barcelona result hid behind Hamilton's huge gap. Mercedes did not lose this race purely on pace. They lost it on breakdowns. With 4 laps to go, Antonelli, the title leader, having just fought his way past his own teammate Russell for second place, suddenly slowed and stopped at the exit of turn 5. His car had suffered a power shutdown, and it was not the first. It was the second time in 3 races that a Mercedes had failed in almost exactly the same way. Russell had already dropped out of the lead of the race in Canada with a similar fault. The team's own tech chief admitted the failures traced back to the same broad part of the battery and called the whole thing very painful in public. A fix is coming, he said, when new battery parts are phased in. But it is not here yet. Do the math on what that one failure cost. Antonelli was running second when his car gave out, on track for 18 valuable points. He scored nothing. Hamilton took the full 25 points for the win. In a single afternoon, the title lead Antonelli was carrying fell from 66 points down to 41. 2 cars, 1 race, a swing of 25 points. And the fault that caused it has not been fully solved. Every time a Mercedes lines up on the grid over the next few months, that battery question is sitting in the back of the garage with no answer. That is exactly the kind of weak spot a chasing team builds a whole title run around. So now, layer it all together and look forward, because this is where the story is actually heading. Ferrari leaves Barcelona with the fastest body package it has built all year, a tyre cooling trick the rest of the field is still trying to copy, and a driver who just remembered how to win. And the next upgrade is already loaded into the gun. Ferrari is set to bring an engine step as soon as the very next round in Austria, with a new fuel and an updated engine. It is the first of 2 engine gains the team is allowed this season under the rules that let a trailing engine maker catch up, after Ferrari was judged to sit a clear margin behind the best engine in the field. A second, bigger engine step is set for later in the year, around the Italian Grand Prix, said to be worth a real chunk of power. Power has been the one area where this Ferrari still trails its rivals. Closing that gap turns a strong car into a complete one. That is why the 41-point lead no longer looks safe to the people who study this sport. Race study from the paddock put it about as plainly as it can be put. With this many races still left on the calendar and a Ferrari now looking this strong, the gap between Antonelli and Hamilton does not look too big to close. A month ago, almost nobody would have written that sentence with a straight face. The team picture tells the same story from a different angle. Mercedes still leads that title comfortably, but Ferrari is now the team with the push, the upgrades, and the rival with the breakdown problem. Run the title math, and you can see the shape of the fight. 41 points is less than 2 race wins. Across 15 races still left, Hamilton does not need to be perfect. He needs the Ferrari to keep finishing ahead of the Mercedes, and he needs that battery fault to bite Antonelli 1 or 2 more times. He has already watched it happen once. The engine step is the piece that ties it together, because raw power is where this Ferrari has been quietly losing ground. The catch-up allowance the team was given was not a gift. It was the sport's own measure that Ferrari's engine sat a clear margin behind the best. Wipe that out on a straight, keep the floor and the rims in the corners, and the car stops having a weak spot for rivals to aim at. The next test comes right away. Austria is a power circuit, with long straights and short, sharp corners, a fully different challenge from the air puzzle of Barcelona. If the new Ferrari engine shows up there and the car stays strong, the title talk stops being talk and becomes a real fight. If the car fades on a track that rewards raw power, then Barcelona was a hot weather, high downforce one-off, and the gap holds. Even Vasseur himself warned against reading too much into one great weekend, pointing out that the next race would be a more average test. That caution is the honest read. But the upgrades are real. The rims are real, and the engine is coming within days. This story is not over. It is barely past halfway. The car that won in Barcelona is the base Ferrari spent 3 years building, and it has 15 races left to prove what it can really do. If you want the full engineering breakdown of that Austria engine upgrade the moment it lands on the car, subscribe now, because that is the part that decides whether this becomes the comeback of the decade or the high point of a season that got away.